Hi there. Welcome to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. I would like to first acknowledge our friend, colleague, hero, co-conspirator, Tom Heath is not here today because he is currently traveling back to Sydney. The reason I'm doing that is because he seemed to get a little bit salty about it when we did the whole show last time and didn't mention it. So I would like to acknowledge the existence of Tom Heath. And I think we just want to put that out there. So obviously as to not upset his feelings.
Is Tom a real person though? Like, how do we know he's not an AI?
Are you saying he could be AI generated this whole time? We did have lunch with him yesterday, so that's probably a good indication.
How do we know that Tom is the same Tom that appears on this podcast? Because he only ever appears on this podcast via video link. So you just don't know, George. That's all I'm saying. This is true.
I mean, probably aside from the like nearly a half decade of shows where we recorded in person. Which I videoed and catalogued as evidence. But I understand what you're saying, like from an epistemological standpoint, like how can one know anything from like kind of a Descartesian kind of I think therefore I am, that's all I can know sort of perspective.
But if you've been watching Marvel's Secret Invasion, Rhodesy was a fucking the green alien thing the whole time, and it's just blowing people's minds. Spoilers. Too bad you're here now. I'm really sorry. I really need to get better at doing that and framing spoilers before I call them.
I heard that the Secret Invasion show was not highly regarded, which is a shame because I was looking forward to it. But
anything with Marvel these days is
it's a bit hit and miss, isn't it?
Yeah,
I did love the Marvel back in the day, but I feel like I'm just being deluged by kind of like mid content from them at the moment.
Fire hose of mediocrity.
Yeah. Speaking of a fire hose of mediocrity, Donald Trump. You might have heard that Donald Trump, current duffel bag of shit, and now future, current former president and also future inmate Donald Trump has been indicted for a third time with conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstruction in relation to the January 6th probe.
And these are probably the meaty.
These are the big ones.
We were waiting. These are the big ones.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I announce the season finale of America? It's bigger, it's better, it's bolder. So he's currently up to 78 counts, felony indictment counts, Donald Trump. So one for each year of his glorious life.
Did you say? That's not a real thing. It's actually up to 78.
78 counts. Yeah, because the fake documents case had like 37 counts or something just by itself. So, so if he's found guilty on any one of these felony counts, he's dying in jail, basically. That's the thrust of it. There's also a potential fourth indictment looming still in the wings, which is the Raffensperger case in Georgia, where he was trying to elicit 11,000 votes from the Secretary of State in Georgia in the now famous phone call.
I just need 11,000 votes, so I could just find
11,000. It's 11,000. Come on. So there's the Stormy Daniels case.
Is that a state charge, the Georgia one?
That's a state one. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So the rest of these are federal. So don't worry. If we don't get him on federal, we'll get him on the state charges. He can't pardon himself if it's state charges. If he becomes president
again. Daniels is New York, though, isn't it?
So there's Stormy Dan. Oh yeah, no, you're right. Actually, sorry. There's Stormy Dan, but that's not. That was. I don't know that there was criminal.
That was for business, falsifying business records.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there was some debate at the time as to whether any of those. Like they could be elevated to felony counts if like certain criteria were established. Like it's like a state law. It's the way the state and federal laws sort of interact with each other. It was like a campaign finance. Lying on a campaign finance thing is like a federal offense, but the actual act of paying off the former adult star was a civil offense, but it's like if you're doing and then lying about it, then that could make it a federal felony. Yeah. So there's still some sort of squishiness around that. But so there's the New York case, right? The Stormy Daniels case. There's the documents case, right?
Documents.
I've seen the documents. the documents case where he, I don't think it's alleged at this point. He obviously, clearly, there's photographs of it. He clearly had secret documents in his place in Mar-a-Lago. There's also now follow-up charges that have been added to that indictment, another 4 charges related to the obstruction of evidence. There was basically one of his lackeys has, or 2 of his lackeys rather, have been charged with, sort of trying to delete security footage and move the documents around. So Walt Nauta, Nauta, and Carlos de Oliveira are appearing in a Florida federal court as a result of their alleged roles in the president's alleged unlawful retention of national defense information and obstruction of justice. So there's that case number 2. Case number 3, which is the January 6th case. So basically, the prosecutor, Jack Smith, they've been going through months of grand jury and sort of hearings about this case, basically saying that Donald Trump knew full well that he'd lost the election and was basically engaged in an illegal case to overturn the election, which, if you've been awake and listening, you would realize is also true. And sort of organizing and collating slates of false electors. So each one of these states, when you do an election in the United States, each state votes for president, and whoever has the most votes, there is a slate of electors. So basically, people who are state representatives and party people and things like that form up a little mini representative body and then sign a document that says, we, the slate of electors, put this state in for whomever, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. And
so
what they did
out the middle.
Sorry, say again.
So he was trying to obstruct the people in the middle, basically, of the whole
basically what they
process.
did is, and we didn't really talk about this a lot at the time, but Rachel Maddow did some good reporting on it after the fact. And it was the only person I really heard talking about this story for a good long period. But basically what the Trump administration did is they organized slates of electors from various states that were fake. And basically what they told them, this is what we've learned from this indictment, is like, no, we're only putting these slates of electors together and getting you to sign all this official documentation on the off chance that we win some of these challenges that we're putting forward in these states, and then we'll put them forward. They lied to those people, put them forward anyway as alternate slates of electors, and tried to get done. And that's what allegedly Mike Pence was going to look at and go, I'm going to recognize these electors and not those electors, the true electors. And that's how Donald Trump would ascend to the presidency again, was based on these false slates of electors. So this is all based on a law that was put together after the Civil War, which was about civil rights, denying people their rights, right to vote, right to have your vote counted and represented, by nullifying all of these votes in all of these different states in order to, illegally get Trump back into office. You're violating that statute. And I love all the conservatives online going, oh, but this is a law from 1844. That's so old. That's an old law. What's that about the Second Amendment? What's that? How old's the Second Amendment, buddy? Just checking for a friend. It's like laws are laws. If they're on the books and you break them, then that's how laws work. So that's case number 3. And then, the Raffensperger case in Georgia is, potential forthcoming case number 4. So he's up to 78 felony counts. It's not looking good for the Donald, I have to say.
Not good at all. So the indictment from the other day was charges of conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of an official proceeding, and deprivation of rights under colour of law. And that happened on Tuesday. Now, a lot of the evidence that the grand jury was hearing, by the way, if you're in Australia, a grand jury is a jury that you have before.
It's like a grand jury, a very large jury.
Is it grand army? No.
You have to be over 300 pounds to be on this jury. It's only very big people on the jury.
No, it's a jury that basically recommends whether or not a trial would potentially proceed, or charges would actually be laid in the first place. So it's like a trial before the trial, which I guess that's the American system. I feel like it's a waste of time, but anyway, whatever. So a lot of what the evidence they've been hearing is actually from Mike Pence.
Which I thought was interesting as well. It's definitely gone running to mummy in order to goss on Donald, which I think is hilarious.
Which is, fair enough, because they wanted to.
Maybe when your boss tries to have you killed, I mean, that's probably a pretty good reason to start talking some shit.
Yeah, so that's obviously
you mean Mike Pence from Hang Mike Pence fame?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is it's pretty big because this is what everyone was sort of all the charges leading up to now have basically been we can't get him on the big thing. We'll have to try and sort of work around the issue and get him on some other smaller stuff.
Yeah.
These are fairly meaty charge indictments charges and they go to the heart, I guess, of what happened on January 6th and the events immediately preceding that.
And I think there is definitely a bit of a sense of like, okay, well, I was like, yes, all of those other things are also illegal and bad, but also like we were there for the January 6th thing. We all saw it. We watched it unfold on television. We saw in real time how Donald Trump was, not doing his duty to stop what was happening, how he was taking advantage of the situation to try and overturn an election. Like, you literally just need eyes and ears to understand this crime, right? Like, it's pretty, like, not only is it the most serious, but it's also the most straightforward of all of the crimes, I think.
Now, look, they've obviously, the Trump campaign's obviously come out and said that it's all, a witch hunt and yada, 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 and it's trumped up charges. The charges in and of themselves are election interference for the 2024 election, which is coming up. But yeah, it'll just be one of these things. Well, this is where it's so weird, right? Is that the 2024 campaign is pretty much kicked off now, right? If you're a Republican, it's sure. Kicked off. So, when's the Republican? When do they have to nominate? Like, when's that get confirmed? It's coming up.
So that's a good question. I'll look that up, but I don't think it's like quite soon. I think the first rounds start. I think it's November of this year. I think.
So then I guess the election's November next year.
Yeah.
So it's probably a year before that. So either way, like all of these cases are going to take months and months and months and months. Probably, like, some of them, if they wanted to, it could drag out for multiple years.
Oh, sorry, I was wrong. So in mid-Jan 2024 through to June of 2024 is when the actual elections for Republican primaries are going to happen.
So they've got about a year until they have to finalise
Smack bang in all these cases. So the thing is, like, the judges are going to have to, like, cooperate with one another because obviously they're going to, various places are going to need resources from the Trump camp in order to, like, have these cases proceed. So the judges need to, like, coordinate together as to, like, whose cases goes first. Like,
there is a risk here.
It's like having a medical team. You've got a serious medical illness. You get, like, a team of doctors. In this case, in Trump's case, it's like, well, you got a team of judges in order to see who goes to jail first. Like, every state. All the states are going to want to sort of grind their axe, but of course, probably the federal one would be the most important. But well, here's the thing with the Trump indictment, with the Jack Smith one about the January 6th thing, is that he's named Trump, and there are six unindicted co-conspirators that are mentioned alongside Trump. Now, if you were wanting to get everyone, you'd indict them all. In this case, it sounds like he's only wanting to go after Trump and leaving the other ones unindicted in order to streamline the process, in order to get it through. So it seems like this would be the first one to go through.
Yeah. I guess my point being is that if it like, there could be a real risk that if they drag this out and stuff it up, basically, that this drags into...
That's what they're trying to avoid,
the process of the Republican nomination. And then, hypothetically, what happens if he gets nominated...
Trump's job at the moment is to run for president in order to stay out of jail. Like, that's what his job literally is at the moment, is try to be president to avoid a jail sentence.
And this probably, while it's good, I guess, in the sense that, there is ramifications for actions. The other aspect to this is that it's probably going to divide the nation even more than it already is, and just harden viewpoints.
Fuck him at this stage. Like, if your guy's the guy that's got, 3, maybe 4, pending criminal cases against him, like, and you're still on that guy's side, well, it's at that point, it's your fault, dude. Like,
yeah. I mean, you got what, DeSantis isn't even close at this point.
DeSantis is polling in, like in the 20s or something like that. Yeah. So it's no, like, even if you were able to coalesce all of the non-Donald Trump support around DeSantis, he would still fall short of a majority in order to defeat Donald Trump in the Republican primaries. So that doesn't really seem like if you got Nikki Haley, fucking, Vivek Ramaswamy, all the other Mike Pence, all the other people. What was the governor from New Jersey, who's been going after him lately? Chris Christie. Even if you coalesce all of these other 1%ers and DeSantis together, it's still not enough to displace Donald Trump. So, like, the Donald Trump is better placed to win this Republican primary than he was previously when he won. So it's like it is statistically almost impossible for a Republican, like, unless he literally is arrested and convicted of and sent to jail for these crimes, it is extremely unlikely that any of these other candidates are going to be able to come first in a Republican primary. He is the candidate for all intents and purposes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the grudge, the rematch that no one wants. Well, there are definitely a lot of people that do want it, but from my side,
a round of rock'em sock'em octogenarians.
Yeah. The other aspect,
come here, corn pop.
I mean, the more you hear about Biden, the more it's like he's just so old.
I mean, I literally would prefer a warmed over corpse to Donald Trump at this stage, and if we elect Joe Biden, that's what we're going to get. So, I mean, I will happily vote for that warmed over corpse. If I was an American, I'd be a corpse. I'd vote one corpse.
Now, we've got a few articles to get through today. So we'll go to the next one, which saying in the United States, I mean, I'm not sure the Supreme Court probably wouldn't be hearing any of the charges.
Not unless
federal court, right? Which would be.
So these would be federal court cases. There is a chance, I mean, Donald Trump and his legal teams, plural, are going to do everything that they can to get these cases kicked up to the Supreme Court, whether it's appeals, whether it's whatever, because they know with a conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court, they're likely to have a situation that's more sympathetic to Donald Trump, especially considering Donald Trump appointed several of them. So it's that's what they're trying to do or going to try to do. It's the first round of what happens would be decided in federal or state courts. Yeah.
But if it does go to the Supreme Court, one of the people on the Supreme Court is Justice Alito, who is a conservative, one of those conservatives on the panel that George just spoke about. And
not appointed by Trump, but is definitely an arch conservative shithead. So,
well, yeah, and you would think, but given that he is on the Supreme Court, though, that he would have a pretty good grasp of the Constitution. Would you not?
I mean, that's given that it's your whole job to interpret the Constitution. You'd think you'd know it pretty well inside and out.
So he recently wrote an article to the Wall Street Journal, which didn't play particularly well because he said some stuff which was immediately pointed out to it was kind of incorrect, I guess.
Just straight up wrong.
He said in the text, or the ABA Journal has reprinted the excuse, but he basically said, I know this is a controversial view, but I'm willing to say it. He said, no provision in the Constitution gives them the authority to regulate the Supreme Court, period. And he's talking there about the Congress, right? And the Congress's oversight on the Supreme Court, whether or not, Congress, because there is talk at the moment around Congress passing certain rules, particularly around, I think it's to do with the
accountability and transparency.
And
in the wake of all these stories about Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch and even Samuel Alito himself sort of hanging out with billionaires and having, like in the case of Clarence Thomas, like actually having a billionaire like buy your mum's house and letting her live in it rent free. And, like there were cases where I think it was Alito was friendly with some billionaire who actually had like business before the court and stuff as well. It's like just like clear and obvious corruption. Like I don't know
interest, shall we say?
How else you can describe it? Like if you were anyone except a Supreme Court judge, like you'd have to recuse yourself. Like if it was any other judge in any other circuit, to even just the appearance of a conflict of interest, you'd have to recuse yourself. But not Samuel Alito. He says, can't touch this. Do.
Lobster dinners are fine as long as they're with mobsters, which is a very niche Victorian joke. But anyway,
no, they come for the Samuel Alito, stay for the niche Matthew Guy references. So there's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 of the Constitution that I guess Samuel Alito hasn't gotten around to reading, gives Congress the power to, quote, make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. So basically, Congress has got the power to make the laws, and those laws can affect any department of the United States. Now, I guess Alito is basically saying, you and what army? Is saying like, come at me, try and regulate me, and I'll just overturn it on constitutional grounds, I guess. But pretty.
Well, this is the thing: is that are the courts, is the Supreme Court technically a department of the United States?
Well, is it a branch? The way the whole checks and balances, right, between the three different branches. You've got the executive, you've got Congress, you've got the judiciary, right, the Supreme Court, and the way these the way it's described in the Constitution is three co-equal branches of government, checks and balances. Right? And they all check and they all balance each other out, right? So you can't have checks and balances if one area is not allowed to regulate other areas, right? Because that would be the balance part of the checks and balances, right? So basically what he's saying is our system of checks and balances, X gone, give it to you. And X in this case being Samuel Alito. So
I mean, it was funny. We were reading the tweet that George just read out from X as well, which is
X,
Twitter, X. What is life even?
I'm still calling it Twitter. I refuse. So there was a great tweet from Steve Mazie who also said, at this point, Alito should just get himself a Substack, to which Leah Lippman responded, the Wall Street Journal is his Substack though. That's what it is.
What is a Substack?
It's a blogging sort of platform for writers. You can sort of, like Patreon, you can sort of pay and follow writers, and read their blog posts. But yeah, literally the Wall Street Journal is Samuel Alito Substack. He literally just goes, opines to some friendly reporter, and then gets his perspective printed on the front of one of the most respected newspapers in the nation. It's like, yeah, cool. That's not how any of this is supposed to work, but that's cool and normal.
It's all good. They could throw a coup. That might sort it out.
Yeah. No, it's really fun when members of the judiciary just spray their faces with silver spray paint and scream, "Witness me," right before they issue any sort of edict. That's really what you want to see.
Yeah. They're all totally irrational actors who are very sane.
Speaking of rational actors, there was a bit of a coup in Niger.
Niger.
Niger. I barely know her. No, I believe if you're being fancy, it's pronounced Niger.
Niger.
In Africa, there was a coup recently, and it's been throwing West Africa into a bit of
chaos.
A bit of chaos. Yeah, I was trying to find a way to describe that. That wasn't overly offensive. Yeah.
So Niger is, I think, the third or fourth country in West Africa to have a coup. A military, by the way, when we say coup, it's a military coup, which means the military are basically like, fuck your government, and we are the government now. I
am the government now.
Also following, I think, Burkina Faso and another country as well nearby. Mali has got, lots of issues with insurgencies and that kind of thing as well. So West Africa at the moment, they're doing it pretty tough if you're a member of the public, as it were. So given this is the third coup in about a year and a bit.
Just for FYI, if you do one more, you get a free coffee. So
yes, free coffee, yeah. Make sure you bring the card, though. If you don't have the card,
well, we don't know how we know.
Coup.
Like, we see you in here all the time, but how do I know?
Trying to throw coups. So what that has meant is that there is a basically a West African body of other nations, because it turns out Africa's not just one country, guys. It's actually a continent.
No,
and there are a lot of
it's just South Africa. That's all I've heard about in the news. So.
There's actually lots of countries, and one of them is one of the blocks that I guess is part of the continent of Africa and one of the surrounding countries. It's called ECOWAS, which is ECOWAS, and the defense chiefs from those member states, after this whole thing went down, basically got together and decided that this whole coup thing needs to sort of calm the fuck down. They issued an ultimatum to the new military leader, and I can't pronounce his last name, but he's a general, so we'll just go with that, the leading military general in Niger, that basically if they didn't cede power back to the previous government, that there would be a military intervention.
So basically sort your country out or we'll come in and sort it for you.
Yeah.
More or less. So it's like when, you're arguing over a toy with your sister and then your mum comes in and goes, guys, if you can't sort it out, I'm gonna come in and sort it out for you. You know what I mean?
Now
you just gotta let Liv have the Game Boy for a bit, okay? You've had the Game Boy for hours. It's time to put it down. It's time to share.
Put it down. Yeah. Share the government.
The Game Boy being, of course, the nation of Niger.
Yeah. And this is it's pretty bad because, and the other thing being, I guess, is that there's a lot of French. The French still have, this is where it gets really complicated, right? So the French still have a bit of an interest in the region. They were basically running their own counterinsurgency stuff in Mali. They kind of got kicked out of Mali and they brought in Wagner from Russia, the Wagner group. And now Wagner group's been operating in Mali for the last year or so, basically running around sort of fucking shit up from all accounts. There are questions around their conduct in that country.
You'd be very surprised at the long dick of Wagner and the way it fucks nations from all over the world.
And this is, the thing is that they've not just in Mali, but in other areas of Africa as well. They are also there as a private military contractor. Fingers in pots, soft, and it's all just Putin, wielding soft power in the region, by the way.
Well, but it's also a revenue source because they're taking over things like gold mines and oil wells and things like that. And that's part of how they sort of grew to prominence and power so quickly, is because they've been doing this for over a decade, where they sort of take over an insurgent run whatever oil field, and then they get a percentage of the profits from that on an ongoing basis. They get trailing commissions. No job I ever worked at did I get trailing commissions. You get paid once and that's it.
As an actor, you get trailing commissions after your ad every so often.
No, you get $30 every 3 years, maybe, under the current arrangements with Netflix, with SAG-AFTRA.
I've been getting $1,000 every so often for a commercial I did many years ago. So
if it's re-airing,
it's re-airing, every 12 months. That's all right. But anyway, that's beside the point. But the point is,
lunch is on you then, mate.
Yeah, I know. After ECOWAS issued their sort of decree, which I think was in consultation with the French as well. So ECOWAS is still in bed with the French. So obviously there's
sort of vestiges of colonialism there. There's some sort of ongoing relationships there. So
and the French lately have been trying to wield some diplomatic power across the globe. Macron visited the Pacific and stuff. So the French are trying to sort of stay relevant, I guess, in terms of world affairs. Yeah. Anyway, so they issued a demand.
And they responded well. They said, we'll lay down our arms and get fucked right quick.
They did not. They went and had a meeting with Wagner and are allegedly in talks with getting them into Niger to act as a buffer, I guess, against any intervention, which is a serious consideration because if, there are some, relatively competent, European forces in the theatre, it means that any military intervention by ECOWAS, including the concept of potentially any insurgency that would come from the local populace, gets really complicated. So bit of a ballsy move, but also one that probably makes a lot of sense given the sort of the increasing amount of military governments that are sort of I guess throwing coups and taking over their countries in those sort of areas. I'm trying to figure out what the other country was that had a military coup. There was another one, but anyway. But yeah, so basically the other thing being as well, rather than having a direct conflict with the United States, Russia is looking to, at the moment, put soft pressure on the United States and the West across the world in different theaters. So, for instance, at the moment, over the skies in Syria, they're trying to interdict US drones, putting lots of pressure in and potentially creating a conflict elsewhere, which may drain resources, attention away from Ukraine, right? So it's. I
feel like that's going to split their attention more than the West's attention. I feel like
potentially. I mean, do you really want to get involved in a West African? I mean, I guess if they're earning money, then it's probably useful.
Yeah, maybe.
Rather than spending money, you're earning money from a conflict.
Get something back from it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is where I guess the whole private military contractor thing gets so complicated, right? Like it's the conflict in and of itself is the
product.
So it's not really in their best interest to wrap it up in some ways.
That's all right. We fought all the wars, guys. Guess we're retiring, going home. See you later, boys.
Indeed. It's getting pretty dicey in Niger. And the other thing, in East Africa, like there's the insurgency in Sudan still, we don't
talk about
civil war
a lot in Western media. It doesn't get a lot of coverage, but it's a shame because ECOWAS and these other regional blocks have prior to this have been considered, really sort of effective, groupings and have had a lot of success in sort of developing their countries and economies and, for the common good, trading and cooperation and like all that good stuff that you would hope to see. So to see them sort of embroiled in this kind of situation I don't know. What else are you supposed to do? You just got to let one of your neighbors get cooed out of existence. I don't know. It's just like, it's a really tricky situation. Yeah. I don't know what else you can do.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And there's still lots of other problems on the African continent with not only like humanitarian issues. They're everywhere, and which is partly why there's significant movement north towards Libya and the North African coast for refugees that are traveling to Europe, migrants, which I think recently the EU pledged a couple of $2 billion to try and sort of sort out the whole people dying at sea thing. Curiously, they haven't said, like Australia did, that they'll detain anyone that arrives by boat. They're sort of looking at more sort of practical applications with that money. But it's not good, and it's an interesting sort of trend that sort of seems to happen. That once one country has a coup, that there's political instability that follows there shortly after in another country.
A domino effect. That's what they're always worried about, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I find interesting about all of this is like whenever you poll citizens in a particular country about their foreign aid budget. And they say, like, how much do you think we're spending on foreign aid? And people will be like, I reckon like 30% of the budget. And it's like, no, it's like a fraction of a single percent that we spend on foreign aid. And I don't know, people seem to think that foreign aid is really just for the purposes of like doing good for the sake of doing good. And I'm sure there is an element of that. But like more often than not, it's projecting soft power. People, these development organizations, these countries that spend money on foreign aid, why do you think they're doing it? They're doing it because they've got some sort of strategic interest in the region, even if it is just something as simple as like, we want to stabilize what's happening in Northwest Africa so we don't have a deluge of migrants coming through to Europe. Like it can be really as like, yes, it has an altruistic outcome in that we help to stabilize the region, but there are still selfish reasons as to the reasons that they're providing that foreign aid. So whenever foreign aid gets cut and diplomacy gets cut, I always think it's such a backwards thinking kind of move because it's like you spend $1 on diplomacy rather than 10 or 20 on military, like you'll save yourself a lot of pain down the line if you don't have to go to war in order to fix some of these problems that might just be ameliorated by sending people some cash so their society doesn't fall apart, so they need to seek new societies. Like, it's a good thing to do, but it's not always just out of pure altruism. There's a strategic reason we're spending this money, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the case to Australia's north, right? With Labor being in government now, there's been a renewed focus on our Pacific partners.
Yes, exactly.
And everyone is basically out at the moment to suck the Solomon Islands dick. Like the guy, the head of the Solomon Islands isn't exactly, like he's not what am I trying to say?
What are you trying to say?
He's not corrupt. He's not corrupt, but there have been questions around his conduct in various areas of the government. Shall we say that?
Right.
But anyway, you've got US Anthony Blinken, you've got China, you've got Australia, the French president, all rocking up to the Solomon Islands doorstep, and bloody Tonga and these other small little island nations trying to be like, hey, how you doing?
Hey, you want to be friends with us? The people we've ignored for a century. Hey, you want to be our buddies?
Quite literally. It's and the other thing with the French, is that they are still, New Caledonia is still a French territory, and that's right in the middle of all this, right? Like the French are basically have sort of realised if they want to hold on to, I think, New Caledonia, they've got to probably sort of step up in the region to sort of make themselves more present. Otherwise, people will sort of get sick of them. Anyway, so that's enough about world politics. But basically, Niger, I hope that doesn't get into another sort of massive civil war, just like is happening currently in Sudan. In Australia,
speaking of
civil war, we love a good court case. We love a good lawsuit. We love a good civil suit, and particularly the people that love bringing those suits, as it turns out, politicians or former politicians, because they're the only ones that can afford to do so. And in this case here, following the example set by her colleagues, former Defence Minister Linda Reynolds has launched a defamation action against Brittany Higgins.
So, for those who are unaware, Brittany Higgins was a former staffer of Linda Reynolds who alleged that she had been sexually assaulted and raped in the office of Linda Reynolds by Bruce Lohman. That's the allegation, who was also another staffer at the time. There was a resulting criminal case against Bruce Lohman, which was then dismissed and was not retried out of an abundance of concern for the mental health of Miss Brittany Higgins. And also, interestingly, there's been a story this week that the prosecutor who ran that prosecution against Bruce Lohman has since resigned. And there was some
really?
This is just this week. So there was he was making allegations at the time that there was political pressure against him bringing the charges and things like that. And he since retracted those statements. And then there's been some findings that have come out that have suggested sort of inappropriate behavior on his behalf. In terms of how he was handling the prosecution. There's nothing in there to say that the prosecution shouldn't have gone ahead, but it does feel like there's been some mechanism within the government that's been pushing back against this prosecutor since he made those allegations about political pressure, right? So he's since stepped down. And then we get this news just the other day that Linda Reynolds has launched this legal action against Brittany Higgins for defamation based on some social media posts that she made earlier in the year. Now, the ABC has not republished the content of those social media posts because
that would be
doing that would also be defamation. So it's kind of a little bit difficult to judge because I didn't see the posts. But also when you're
the other thing,
go on.
Well, just the other thing. So there's defamation. There's another aspect which is basically she breached non-disparagement clause in an agreement. So basically breaching a contract. So basically in 2021, she entered a settlement contract with Linda Reynolds. Brittany Higgins had a settlement out of court. And there was a non-disparagement clause in that settlement, which said that basically Higgins couldn't slang shit at...
disparage, I think, was the word you're looking for there.
Slang shit. I mean, that's what it is. Sling.
Please stop. Please. This topic is so much more serious than what you're giving this.
So basically that had been breached as part of the social media posts. Yeah. Now, in July, Reynolds...
That's the allegation.
Put out a legal... notice or whatever.
Please explain.
Saying you need to back off or we will proceed with legal action. For all intents and purposes, apparently that hasn't happened, or there hasn't been an adequate response.
Miss Reynolds said that her decision to pursue legal action was because of a, quote, wholly unsatisfactory response, unquote, after issuing a concerns notice in July.
And so now she's launched the lawsuit. Now, there's been a few other people that have sued former
Peter Dutton.
What's his name? Attorney General.
Christian Porter, former Attorney General, and current PwC candidate Christian Porter.
Yeah. And then obviously, I guess the other high-profile defamation case was not a part of the government, but was the war crimesy. Ben Roberts-Smith is the other big notable defamation case that's been launched.
War crimesy
person. Technical terms.
Allegedly war crimesy.
Allegedly war crimesy. Anyway, so this is another one, and
I don't know why. I like Australian laws compared to other countries' laws seem to be pretty tight on defamation. From what I can tell, like compared to like American defamation laws, for example, it's almost impossible to get a defamation claim through in America just because of the way they've structured it. I don't love this, the way it's like popularly used in Australia. It seems like this mechanism, which is like specifically powerful people suing people who are not powerful, rich people in government, like because of things that they've said about them, like the Shane Barzy tweet, like saying that he alleged that Peter Dutton was a rape apologist because of the, something to do with it was to do with asylum seekers. Peter Dutton claimed that certain asylum seekers, people seeking asylum, had launched claims of sexual abuse that they were, quote, trying it on, I believe was the expression that he used. So and then Shane Barzy made that comment, and then Peter Dutton sued him and won, but I believe it was overturned later on. So, like, I'm not thrilled with this precedent of like people, ministers, frontbench ministers suing random citizens for things that they say on Twitter. Like, don't love that as a precedent.
No,
doesn't seem
it feels
slightly chilling, right? Which is the point. You can't say shit about me because I'll come after you. I have the power and resources to do so. Imagine you have an employee and the employee alleges that they have been raped in your office. Okay. You then spend time during the case, like conferring with the alleged rapist's lawyer and having like some sort of interaction there. You then turn around and sue the woman who was raped in your office. Like, it just seems like preternaturally cruel. Like, I don't know how else to describe it except just like incredibly vindictive. And if you recall, Linda Reynolds has also like come off like pretty bad in terms of her interactions with Brittany Higgins since these accusations were levied against Bruce Lerman. There was the famous incident where she called her a lying cow after Miss Higgins went public with allegations. Now, Miss Reynolds stressed that her comments were not a reference to the allegations Miss Higgins had made. She's just calling her a lying cow about other stuff, I guess.
She took paper from the copier.
Yeah, just a lying cow. Yeah. Oh, okay. Put that copier paper back, Brittany, you cow. Linda Reynolds said, quote, "I have never questioned Miss Higgins' account of her alleged sexual assault and have always sought to respect her agency in this matter." The apology followed a letter sent by lawyers representing Miss Higgins to the senator demanding a public apology for the hurt and distress that her comments had caused. So it's like, okay, you're not questioning that it happened, but also like, so you're saying you acknowledge that you believe her when she says these things have happened, and then you're turning around and suing this person? It's just like I don't know, man. It just seems really mean. Just real nasty and mean, Linda.
It's definitely, it's something about this former Liberal government that they just want to sue everyone. I don't understand. I get it from a logical point that they want to make sure that their version of the truth is, and it's a chilling effect as well.
But it's Streisanding thing. Like, I don't know what those tweets were, but I'm going to look them up now. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
we'll find out.
I never heard of these insults before, but now because of this case, that's going to blow all of these things up. That's going to be in the media. Like, I don't understand what they're trying to achieve other than
spotlighting the issue. Like, you just
punishing the people that they see as their opponents. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it's about. The cruelty, I think, is the point. As was so often the case with the Liberal government over the last 9 years.
And
Miss Reynolds last month issued a statement raising concerns also over a settlement payment she says was made to Miss Higgins by the federal government in relation to a civil claim made against her and a fellow WA Senator, Michaelia Cash. Miss Reynolds called for this payment to be investigated by the National Anti-Corruption Commission. So the federal government has reached some sort of settlement on behalf of Linda Reynolds with Brittany Higgins, and then Linda Reynolds is saying, I'm going to recommend that payment to the NAC because that was inappropriate somehow. You know what I mean? It's just like, it just boggles the mind. Like, what are you doing, Linda? Like, I know your middle name's Karen, but you don't have to fucking act like it all the time. Like,
I would love to know what's going on in the inner sanctum of that drama, but yeah, it's, as you said, it's just comes across as being vindictive and
just vindictive. That's how it seems to me. I don't know. Maybe I don't know all the factors. Maybe I don't know all the, maybe there's some like 12D chess going on. But if someone tells me that they've been the victim of a sexual assault, I'm inclined to believe them and treat them seriously and respect them and support them. But I'm also, they're not doing things to undermine that person, to undermine their credibility, right? Which is what the lying cow comment is about, really. I'm not doing things to make their lives harder in any ways. Like, even if I did feel like there was I was being hard done by as that person's former boss.
Move on. Just move on.
You just got to fucking nut up and deal with it and move on with your life. Like,
she's still a member of parliament.
You're going to sue this person after what she's been through, allegedly?
Yeah. And like, Linda Reynolds is still a member. She's still a senator.
I thought she'd finished up.
No, I think she still is. I could be wrong. WA senator. No, she's still a senator.
Oh, yeah. She's just obviously not a member of the government because they're not in power anymore. Yeah.
She still has my point being is that Linda Reynolds still has a job to do. She should be focusing on the issues of the day, right?
Yes, yeah.
Not trying to fucking sue people for stuff that happened 3 years ago. This is what I'm saying.
This old government, this LNP guy, and it's still... it's still most of the members who are still in the shadow cabinet, right, from the LNP are the same fucking people that were in government just a year or two ago, right? It's not a bunch of fresh-faced idiots. It's the same idiots. They're just vindictive. Like they can. This is what I've been saying over the previous 3 terms of parliament. It was about the cruelty, the policy we had about asylum seekers and arrivals on boats, and turning the boats around. And keeping people in infinite detention. And so, so many of the policies of the previous government were about the cruelty. It just seems to me like the character of the previous government is one of nastiness and vindictiveness and cruelty. And that's manifested even still in the current day, and that they just can't let it go. They can never let any of this stuff go, whether it's Peter Dutton, whether it's Christian Porter, whether it's Linda Reynolds. They just have this complete inability to take a step back and empathize and think, hey, might we be the baddies? Like, at no point has that thought ever crossed Peter Dutton's mind. Like, oh, wait, are we the baddies though? Like, never, not once. They're just like, it's attack, attack, attack. It's the Donald Trump sort of playbook. Right, you're never on the defense because you're always attacking, and I guess that I don't know makes sense to a certain degree. It started with Tony Abbott, I think, being in opposition against Julia Gillard because it worked as a political tactic. But then when you're the ones in power, it's just like punching down, and there was just been a decade of punching down, and they just got used to it. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's so bizarre to me. It's just probably infuriating. Like.
It's probably a good way to segue to the next story, which I'm going to move ahead, which is the so basically after the Robodebt findings came out, Scott Morrison put a statement out, basically saying that he rejected all of the claims, and that he was being, he
describes it as a political lynching. The use of the word lynching is fucking wild. That is wild to me. In this day and age, to say that you've been even politically lynched, I'd be like, bro, slow your roll, man. Like, what are you talking about? How is that? The use of that word is so like politically and historically charged. Like, I just can't imagine. That's just bizarre.
It's a lot. And the other thing
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Is that, I mean, by doing so, he just handed Labor like a fucking free hand grenade to throw back at him.
Oh, I'll have a news cycle. Thanks for that, mate.
Yeah, cheers. So Bill Shorten, who has, look, I mean, he's been doing quite a lot as the Government Services Minister and Minister of the NDIS, but it basically gave him a bit of a platform to have another smash at Scott Morrison's, which we'll play the clip for now.
In the game of smash or pass, Bill Shorten always chooses smash.
Cook has said that the Royal Commission findings on him are just wrong, and he, with his trademark blame shifting, just says this is a political lynching of himself, and he just would like Labor to move on. The real victims were those who took their own lives. The real victims are the mothers of those who took their own lives. The real victims are all those Australians who lost trust in government because of an unlawful scheme run for 4.5 years. I've gone to who the real victims are. But one person who is not a real victim is the member for Cook. Yesterday, the member for Cook claimed that the adverse findings against him were disproportionate, wrong, unsubstantiated or contradicted. The purpose of that statement was to frame himself as the real victim of the Robo-Debt Royal Commission. The member for Cook said, and I quote, that in making their finding, the Commission sought to reverse the onus of proof to establish their claim. Satire is truly dead in this country when the member for Cook complains about the reversal of onus of proof on him, but not the 434,000 people who did have their reverse onus. And the member for Cook then said the Royal Commission was a quasi-legal process, a new Morrisonian doctrine about the law. The Royal Commission was not quasi-legal, it's real, it was constituted by the law. 46 days of public hearings, over 100 witnesses under oath. And I can hear I can see the member for Cook lip-syncing something. Well, let us be very clear. The victims of robo-debt never had their legal costs paid for, never had the chance to see the evidence put against them. The member for Cook is a bottomless well of self-pity and not a drop of mercy for all of the real victims of robo-debt.
I miss
Bill.
Bill Shorten.
Get him, Bill. I think he would have been a good PM. What do you reckon?
Yeah,
he would have been all right.
I think so. Bill Shorten was at his best when he was emotive, and
when he was fired up. Yeah.
When I distinctly remember when Labor decided they were going to change process after the Prime Minister knifing situation for 3 years, they changed it so they had to both him and Albanese. Both had to give, pitches basically to the Labor caucus and at large. I remember Peter Dutton's speech when he became leader was a great speech, amazing speech.
Peter Dutton's speech?
No, sorry, not Peter Dutton. Bill Shorten. I'm projecting old men into other old men with suits. No, but Bill Shorten's speech was amazing. When he was going up against Anthony Albanese in that first one. That was back in like 2014, something like that, right?
Like that, yeah.
And then, I think as time went on and they tried to sort of chip away at the Liberal lead, he just became a fucking bunch of one-liners, and he just came across as sort of snarky, which was not when he's at his best. When he's at his best, he's like that.
Is when he's passionate.
And he's emotive. Yeah. He's passionate. He's fired up, and he's got the facts to prove it.
I remember when, there was a clip of him at a pub, and he was like yelling about gay marriage. It was about the plebiscite. And I remember thinking, like, where was this Bill Shorten? Like, I don't know if they tried to sort of tamp him down, make him more sort of palatable for the electorate or whatever. But like,
I think so.
It just seemed like, that's the real guy. Like, where's he been this whole time? Like, yeah.
And I think, that goes to show that I think Bill is probably doing a great job in his ministership because he's basically had to deal with the whole fallout from robo-debt. He's had to work with, the issues with the NDIS and the funding with it, and he's had to deal with, trying to rebuild certain sectors of the public service.
So it's a really tough portfolio that he's been tasked with. Like, it's a lot of very sticky sort of areas of government, right? Not easily solved problems.
And I mean, the Centrelink rate went up the other day, again, for the first time in a while. Second time. But those two times collectively are the first time in a while.
So when they announced that $40 increase in the budget, they put the $40 increase in, and then they subjected it to indexation. So it ended up being about $56 a fortnight. Still woefully inadequate, but like better than nothing, I guess. Better than nothing. Labor under Albanese. Better than nothing.
And yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting sort of time and question time this week. Question time is, look, if you can get past all the boring bullshit and you're ever at home on a Tuesday afternoon, you could turn on ABC 24 or whatever channel's airing it, and question time is actually pretty entertaining.
There's a lot of, there's often fiery exchanges. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I have a life. It exists somewhere. But the other thing that happened this week was that Albanese and Dutton clashed heads over, I guess, the Indigenous voice. The Liberals are now trying to sort of, apart from the whole, the usual stuff that we've talked about previously, they're now sort of trying to sort of, I guess, coat the whole thing. They're trying to sort of frame the treaty aspect. Like, when's a treaty going to happen? Why aren't we doing
how much is the treaty going to cost? And like, if you're so, and they're also simultaneously making the claim that the Liberal Party is not against the voice, right? We're not against the divisiveness. We would just want a legislated voice, right? Not a constitutional voice, because altering the constitution is bad because reasons. I don't know quite exactly what the argument is there, but you can't be campaigning against the constitutional voice, saying the voice is bad, but then also saying you agree with a legislated, just like a straight up piece of legislation that achieves the exact same thing. Like, why would you support one, not the other? Like, it makes no sense.
No, and also, like, once the referendum happens, if it gets up, they have to legislate it anyway.
Yeah, it's all the point is it's legislated, right? Yes, we are making a constitutional change in the way that Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders are recognised, but that needs to, like, the reason they want it enshrined in the Constitution and to have constitutional recognition is because they don't want a subsequent government to be able to turn around and just say, actually, get rid of it. Exactly, which is almost certainly what the Liberals would do next time they got into power, right?
They could always, redo it. Like, the thing is, the constitutional change is very simple. It's just like, would you like to have a voice? And then that doesn't really describe, really, the actual wording in the Constitution won't really describe what the voice is. It's the legislation.
Basically what it does is it says, and then Parliament will decide what that looks like, right? So it is legislate. Like, you still get as much input over the legislation process as any other, as any other piece of legislation. But I think what's happened is that the Liberals have more or less admitted that this is something that this is their Benghazi, right? This is the thing that they can use to beat up on the Albanese government and make a difference to the election. And basically all the commentary around this has been saying, like, oh, well, this is going to affect how, whether Albanese wins or loses with this referendum is going to be like the hinge point for what happens next in Australian politics, whether Albanese is able to be re-elected or whether things swing to Dutton. And I don't think it's so clear cut. Like, obviously, if it fails, and it looks likely to be something that's going to fail given the numbers at this point, I don't think that necessarily says anything about Albanese as much as it says about Dutton and him wanting to be a divisive, dog whistling, borderline racist sympathizer. I think it says more about Dutton than it does about Albanese. But let's hear their exchange about Garma, which is an Indigenous festival that's kicked off this week, and Dutton's reticence to attend the apology to Indigenous Australians 10 years ago or 15 years ago, whenever it was, 2008, I think it was.
The Leader of the Opposition not only opposed it, threatened to resign from the front bench over it, and walked out on that event. So terrible was it that in that moment of national unity, there were only a few people who were so determined to sow division that they just couldn't cop the concept of saying sorry for the wrong thing being done, for children being stolen from mothers, fathers and grandparents, families and communities. Could not stomach it.
That the House, one, notes that the Prime Minister is dividing the nation with his divisive voice proposal by deliberately refusing to provide detail to the Australian people. Two, notes that the Prime Minister promised on 34 occasions to implement the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full, which includes the Makarrata Commission's national treaty-making process, but has since continually denied that there will be a treaty. Three, notes that the Minister for Indigenous Australians said work on a treaty was to start within weeks, but the Prime Minister is now walking that back. In two Trainwreck media interviews, the Prime Minister is telling different audiences different things on the treaty. Four, notes that despite the Prime Minister being shifty on whether a treaty is being worked on, he's already allocated $5.8 million for the Makarrata Commission national treaty-making process, but refuses to explain how $900,000 of this money has already been spent.
As Peter Dutton saying words. I could not give two shits about obviously we need a treaty. I've believed that for a long time. Like, I think that should be part of the process. I think they're deliberately going out of their way to cause confusion and to muddle the process by bringing treaty into this discussion about the voice. This discussion about the voice to Parliament is not about the treaty. That's a separate discussion. That's not going to happen with a single referendum, right? That's a plan that's going to take years, potentially decades, to work through with various stakeholders and representative bodies.
And the hundreds of Aboriginal nations within the
400.
Australian continent.
Yeah. So I just don't understand. I do understand. It's not, the whole point is to conflate the issue so people go, oh, I don't know about this. This all seems very hard. My brain's working very hard. Old Daryl building the missiles down in Geelong is looking at this going, oh, fuck, it all seems pretty complicated. Hey, I don't know about this, so I'm just going to vote no. Legitimately, they're just taxing cognitive resources to exhaust you to the finish. Let's go. The Makarrata Commission. How many... I don't care about $900,000 in the Makarrata Commission. Okay, I don't care how many. That's like 0.5 of a corrupt car park, Peter. Okay, I don't give a shit. Nobody cares. You bald idiot.
But look, I mean, it's been effective. To give Dutton and the Liberal Party credit, it's been effective.
Yeah, because it's lowest common denominator, divisive, shitty politics.
Yeah,
which is to inspire fear, create confusion, we should be better than this as a nation. Of course it works, but these are black hat tools. You shouldn't use them because it fucks up our body politic. And Peter Dutton knows that. He doesn't care. He's prepared to do whatever it takes to get back into power.
Yeah. Interestingly, though, that it has muddied the waters on the numbers for the voice referendum, but in terms of the polling for who's your preferred prime minister and all that kind of shit, it hasn't really moved that much.
No.
So yes, he's affecting the voice, but I don't know whether it's really making any ground for him politically.
I guess we'll find out, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it just makes people normie voters look at that and go, maybe poisons their opinion on the voice, which is sad and terrible, because I think we're missing a generational opportunity to recognise Indigenous Australians as part of our constitution, as part of having some sort of direct representative voice to Parliament. I think we're missing a massive opportunity by letting this go. But he's doing that. He's talking all this shit. And that will, potentially ruin the voice to Parliament. But it may not even have the intended effect of bludgeoning Albanese and his government. I don't think.
My point.
I think normie voters are going to look at that and go, actually, it kind of makes this no, I'm not going to vote for the voice, but I'm also not going to therefore vote for Peter Dutton as a result of that. It kind of makes you look like an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah, and that'll be interesting just to see. We're obviously still several months away from the actual vote. I think we're looking at November. I still don't think they've set a date yet specifically. But yeah, we'll see what happens. In the meantime, we can debate the great debate, George.
The debate of our generation. The debate that swept the nation, that swept the globe.
Is the bear in the Hangzhou Zoo a person or an actual sun bear?
It's a sun bear. I've seen the documents.
Is it though?
It is.
We're showing the picture on our stream at the moment. So if you're watching that, you can see it. If you don't know what
it does, this picture, and the
reason that it looks like person,
you'll find it immediately.
You'll find it.
But if you look at the photo, this one frame of footage where it kind of like looks like it's the bear's face is kind of blurred between two different frames. If you look at that one frame in isolation, it makes it look like he's a guy standing up in a bear suit. But if you look at the footage, that looks a bit weird. And then he sits down and you go, oh, that's a bear. It's obviously a bear.
But look at his short little legs. He's little, like it's like the costume doesn't fit properly at the back. He's got some extra skin.
They're weird bears. They're weird looking bears. That's what they look like. You see it from the other angle and you go, oh yeah, it's a bear.
That could be a person.
No, it couldn't.
Because the way the feet are standing.
Because the face is moving and you see it like if you look at one image. You look at one image in isolation, which means nothing. I don't know why this is an article. I don't know why we're talking about it. I don't know why we're talking about it now on this show.
It's just another thing that the CCP is putting out there.
It's the liberal media.
No, it's definitely a bear, but it has been interesting watching the online reaction this week. Tom found an article from Giant because there are people that like to dress as animals. And there are pictures, an article that Tom dragged up of a guy in Japan that likes to dress up in a really expensive dog suit that does looks quite a lot like Lassie, to be fair. Let's see.
What, Lassie? There's a man trapped inside you? Down at the old mill?
So yeah, I mean, maybe there are some, across the world, who knows how many fake animals are sitting in zoos. We don't know. We don't know the answer.
To be honest, like given how they tend to treat these animals at zoos across the world, I'd almost prefer it if it was a hired person in a in a suit, because at least there's no animal cruelty going on there. So maybe they get to go home for dinner.
Some people enjoy that kind of thing, I think, is probably the...
that is a whole subgenre, yeah.
Yeah, that's so particular part of the internet that we won't go into. But yeah, so if you had any doubts, I mean, the bear could be a person, but it's most likely a bear. And yeah, I think we solved it, George. We solved the internet this week.
We did it. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you find us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at our handle, Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and motherflippin' TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And what's the other one? Threads at George Tsipos.
Don't follow me anywhere, because if you do, I will dress up in a bear costume and chase you.
Terrifying. Thanks for listening, guys. I love your faces. We'll see you next week. Yeah, no, deeply unsettling. Well done.
Yep.